Hi guys. You will die one day. That's not a very good way to start a YouTube video, I'm aware, but I'm a very cut to the chase kind of gal, you know? Oh, I forgot this is also a podcast. I keep saying YouTube video and like video in general when I keep forgetting that this is initially a podcast. Welcome back to my podcast. This is going to transform into an ASMR one because it's going to be deep, so might as well be deep vocally as well. You know, I was hesitant about today's topic. I was thinking about so many different kinds of topics. One topic that like sprung to mind, and actually a couple, is who is Allah and who is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I want to do those topics in the future, but I didn't do enough preparation, so I feel like I wouldn't be doing it justice. Either way, I wouldn't be doing them justice, because like there's no amount of work that you can do to explain, you know, Allah and Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and do justice at the same time. Like, it's like you have to see it for yourself to know what it means, you know? Anyway, I'm getting off topic already. What inspired me to do today's topic of you will die one day, which is, you know, not light at all. Like, you'd think maybe I could think of a lighter topic, but no, I like being blunt, because to be frank with you, it does get views. But no, but also I just love how deep and heavy they get, you know, unnecessarily. I was doing something on my computer one day and I needed my computer to stay open and not close so the task can process, right? Because the CPU can be a little sometime. I'm not going to use curse words here. And so I was like, how do you make a laptop stay open? Boom, set a timer. Set a timer on YouTube. So I went on YouTube and I was like, 24-hour timer. And I mean, like, the views that those videos get, do you ever see that? They get like around like hundreds of millions of views. I'm just like, that's such a simple idea, but so useful to so many people. Anyway, I said it and I was like, okay, time to go do my thing. I went away from my laptop. I did whatever I did. I honestly don't even know. It's probably eating. And then I came back and then I saw the time that passed, right? It started from 24 hours and then it became like 23, 36, 27. I don't even, okay? Just like a really random number. But I was sitting there and I was staring at that number decreasing every single second. That's kind of how time works, you know. The seconds go with the seconds and the minutes go with the minutes. And I don't know why I'm explaining the essence of time. But I was looking at this time ticking away. And I was just like, I had like a realization moment at that time. I don't even know how to explain it. It just felt so real. I felt like it was like an out-of-body experience. Okay, I'm being a little dramatic, but it was intense. So I sat there for a hot minute. And by minute, I mean 60 seconds. I sat there for a minute watching the timer decrease by a minute. You know, that's kind of how physics works. The realization was like, oh, a minute of my life is gone. I don't know if, like, I don't know what I had that day. Maybe I ate something funky, or I don't even know, right? But it was like a minute of my life is gone. I saw it before my eyes. A minute is just gone. So I had kind of like an epiphany of like, this life is like moving, like, you know, time is just ticking, and you can't like pause it. You can pause the YouTube video, but you can't like pause time. And it brings me to this point of there's no pause button for time. Like, I know that's obvious and everyone knows the fact, but in essence, if you think about it, it's like time just keeps going and ticking regardless of whether you want it to or not. I recommend anyone who puts a timer on YouTube, just like watch the time tick away. It'll do something inside of you that I don't think anything else will. It's like you see your life go in front of you. Like, right before your eyes, you're seeing parts of you fade away. Okay, that's a little too philosophical, actually. The last part, I take back. And I feel like time is either your enemy or your friend. Like, there's no in between. It's either that you plan your life with time, like, with accordance to time, like you take time into consideration. So like what I'm gonna do in 5 years, what I'm gonna do in 10. And I know that's like a really stupid way to plan. And by the way, you can't plan everything. You don't know what's gonna happen, but it's good to visualize yourself in 5 or 10 years. And then there are those people who are like, who don't even take it into consideration. It's like not even a factor in their lives. They're like, I'm just gonna live forever and time is not a thing. And you know, I'm like, what world are you living in? It must be nice to be there. And I think you grasp the concept of time. Like, time starts to become a more understandable concept when you see it affecting people, when you see it affecting not just yourself, so like growing up from childhood, but to see your parents grow up too. Especially with parents, it's like it really hits you when you realize they're also growing up, and that's something you just can't go backwards in. Like, you have to grow up, but your parents have to grow up as well, you know? And there's gonna be a point where they're gonna grow up and they're gonna become like old age. And the thing is, not necessarily like they don't have to grow up to be old age to pass away. Like, they can reach their 30s and that's it. That's the thing, no one knows when they're gonna go away, and that's the scariest. So that's what makes the concept of time even stranger and weirder. Is like, yes, it's passing, yes, you're gonna grow up, but you also don't know when your time is, your time when you're gonna go out of this world and enter an afterlife and the hereafter, and you're just like you can no longer come back to where you were. So when I see the fact that my parents are growing up the same time I'm growing up, and my siblings as well, it just makes me notice them even more. It makes me notice how big of a role they play in my life. You can see parts of them fade with time. And you know, when someone gets to old age, sometimes they're unrecognizable. It's like you wish you could just hit a back button that takes you back in time when you had your parents healthy and young, but you didn't take advantage of that. You didn't notice it at that time. You weren't grateful or appreciative of the fact. And I don't know, it's just something that when I think about aging, when I think about growth, I don't even really think about myself. Because I feel like only people who died know how death tastes. So for me, I can't even imagine death, because it's like, how does it even feel, you know? But when I think about my parents, when I think about my siblings, my family, when I think about death touching them, when I think about them tasting death, like, that's a whole different playing field of the conversation of death, because you're coming from the point of view of yourself, you know, because when you die, it's like, it's mostly from the point of view of other people. It's like they're watching you die, but you're slowly fading. Like, it doesn't really matter, you're just gonna pass, you know, but people are gonna feel that hurt when you pass. So it's easier to think about your loved ones dying because it's more from your point of view. Like, you know what's going to happen after they're passing. You know how hard it's going to hit, how much it's going to sting, how much it's going to break you from the inside. So this brings me to the question of, when do you realize that you're going to die one day? Because I feel like it's hard to imagine ourselves dying. You know that quote that says, live every day like it's your last? But we don't even know what the last even looks like to experience that, to live that way, you know? And I think 2 ways to know that you're going to die one day and like actually feel it and realize it is that either your loved one is going to pass away, or you're struck with a sickness or an injury or something of that sort that like has taken you to a near-death experience, you know? Not necessarily, when I say near-death experience, you could take it as like the moment that your life flashes before your eyes. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like being in a state where, you know, you're prone to death. And that could be if you're sick, that could be if you're injured, that could be in so many states. That could even be like all phantom. But like you feel what it's like to think about dying. For example, I experienced something not long ago. I got this scar on my forehead. YouTube people, you can see my scar. I don't know if that's clear. Podcast people, just go to my Instagram. You'll literally see my scar on my forehead. It's like a brown, pink, whatever that is. It's a weird color. And I got it by falling in the shower. When I fell in the shower, my forehead cracked open and I laid on the bathroom floor, and I was like frozen. I could not move. Like, it was the weirdest experience of, it's like I'm in between life. And I wouldn't even say death. It's just like being unconscious. You know, I was in between those states. And I think, tilting more towards unconscious, because everything felt so blurry and like out of focus. And I just felt like I didn't even want to be conscious at that time, you know, when I was laying and literally my forehead was cracked open. It was a sucky experience. But it's not the fact that my forehead tearing was the thing that made it feel like a near-death experience. It was more so that I thought there would be an aftermath because of the fall, because of the hit that my head endured during the fall. Like, the way my head hit the floor was so hard, and it was like the ceramic kind, in the bathroom shower. It wasn't even like a tub. It was just really plain, solid, hard rock ceramic. And so it just felt like, if like the amount of pain I felt on my forehead was surreal. And when I talk about the aftermath, I was thinking that I would get a brain injury because of it. And like, prior to that, I just like, my concept of death, my idea of death was just like, oh, death, whatever. Like, I don't know, like, I'm just gonna die one day, whatever. I don't know. It didn't really strike me as the thing to be worried about, or not even worried. I'd say, like, I didn't understand it as much. I didn't really ponder it. It was just something that I like held off, and I was like, it's gonna come when it's gonna come. Like, I shouldn't think about it as much. But when I hit my head that hard, it made me think that I had brain injury. That was the aftermath that I was scared of. I thought I would have brain injury, like a brain hemorrhage, like my brain would start bleeding, because of how hard the hit was. That was the first thing that went into my mind. I didn't even care about the fact that my forehead was like squirting blood. There was blood all over my carpet. I was like, I don't even care. Is my brain okay? Is my brain functioning? I was trying to think of things. I was trying to do math in my head on the bathroom floor because I was scared that my brain would stop functioning. And I'm reading here that brain hemorrhage is like a very life-threatening condition, and it requires immediate medical attention, and that around 1/3 of patients don't survive longer than a month. That's a very scary statistic. Imagine thinking that you might have brain injury and then reading that statistic. The way that scared the absolute crap out of me. I was in the hospital bed and I was thinking about that. Like, the only thing that my mind was circling was, I might have brain injury. My brain might be bleeding right now. I just want them to check my brain. I don't care about the scar. Leave the scar alone. Just check my brain. Turns out there was nothing wrong with my brain. I was just really dramatic. But listen, I was dramatic, but rightfully so, because of how hard the hit was. Okay, I would not have been surprised if it started bleeding, even just a minute bleeding. But when I was sitting there on the hospital bed and they said, there's nothing wrong with your brain, all we need to do is just stitch up the wound and you'll be ready to go home. The amount, I can't explain the sheer gratitude and the sheer love I had for life at that moment in time. It was out of this world. Oh my god. When I recall the things that happened at that time, it just felt like something was gonna go wrong really quickly, and I was scared of losing my brain. And my brain is just one part of my body. Of course, for my body to function, my brain has to function, right? There are parts of your body that you can't be dependent of. You're very, very reliant on. But the way I treated life from that time, the way I thought of death, the way I thought of life and the gifts that we have in this life, the insurmountable gift. There are so many things that we're gifted with that we don't even know about. We just take for granted every single day, and every day goes by and we just think that these things are gonna stay the way that they are and they're not going to decrease with time, which, by the way, isn't true. Everything decreases with time. And honestly, when I heard the news that everything was fine, I felt like the luckiest girl in the world. And ever since, every single day I would tell myself, I am the luckiest person in the world. Now that may come off as the whole manifestation, I think it's called mantras or something, just something that you repeat over and over and over so you can manifest it. I don't know. I'm not going to associate myself with that because I think that is not right and that is shirk. And I feel like Muslims should be wary, but I kept repeating that every single day. I am the luckiest person in the world. I am the luckiest person in the world. And every time I repeat it, I believe it more and more because I think it's true. I believe in my heart, I believe that it's true. And I might face calamities today. My life could turn upside down in an instant, just the same way it did. But I will keep repeating it, and I will keep believing the fact that I am the luckiest girl in the world. I kind of went away from the topic of you will die one day, but that's just something that I experienced, and I feel like it was really, really heavy on my life. And I think I only gave like a snippet of how I felt and what happened. Like I could go into much greater detail in the future, but it's the thing I think that happened in my life which made me understand, or at least ponder the idea of death more than I did before. And if there are those days where I like forget what I learned about death, like I just forget the lesson that I learned with this scar, I will resort to a different perspective. And this perspective kind of stings. Like I don't recommend it for everyone, I don't think. But it is something that grounds me, and it's something that reminds me where I am and what I have and how I'm literally the luckiest person in the world. It's to think about the fact of my loved ones dying. And that's very... I don't know why I'm so dystopian. Like, literally listening to me is depressing. But this is something that I use, okay? This is, honestly, it's not for everybody. I keep saying this. But it's something that grounds me. Like, it just pulls me back into reality. And it, like, shakes me and says, listen, these are your priorities. This is what you have. Love what you have and appreciate it, because it's not going to be here for long. So when I think like that, automatically my brain goes, oh, we have everything that we want. We have everything that we need. We don't need anything else, you know? It also helps me in like this concept of stillness and being present in every moment of my life. So like I will casually be sitting in the living room with my mom, and I will have that, idea. I will have that thought spring to mind of she's not going to be here one day. So I just take everything from that moment, and I savor every single microsecond. Like everything, I absorb it into myself. And that might be like a weird way to think of like, oh, the person I'm with right now might not be here forever, and they won't be here forever. That's a fact. But it is a way to make you live in the moment, to make you fully present, and to make you not give attention to things that are of less priority. Because sometimes you can get your priorities messed up. Like you're on your phone when you're with your family, or you're not spending enough time with your parents, for example. It's just these things, like all of these people in our lives, we take them for granted, but they're not going to be here forever. And you may think, oh, but I might die like before them, so it doesn't really matter. Regardless of that, regardless of the fact of who's gonna die first, which is, now that I'm saying, is a really weird sentence to say, you still have to understand the value of the people that you have in your life. Now, this may come off as like prioritizing people in your life and like being super dependent. Now, I'm coming from this point of view where I'm very family oriented. I wanted to be a very independent person growing up, but the more I grow up, the more I realize that family is what grounds you. Family is there to support you. And I know not everyone's family is like that. And I'm not saying that my family is 100% like that. But my family is there. And I love them, and they love me. So it's like, how could I be so arrogant as to not spend time with them? How could I be so selfish as to not sit with them and be a whole unit as a family? Many people might make the argument that when you prioritize family like that, it's almost like you're living for them. But I would argue the fact that it's not that you're living for them, you're living with them, if that makes sense. You're living life to the fullest with them by your side. They're not holding you down in any way, shape, or form. Family might not have the same values as you, but I think with Muslim families it's a little different, because if you are all real Muslims, Muslims that share common values of all Muslims, family is the most beautiful thing that you have. But of course there are those families that have an abusive parent, or even both abusive parents, and they use Islam to their advantage and they abuse it sometimes. And to that I would say, try to find common ground with them. They are not perfect. they are not supposed to be perfect, but try to find common ground. And the reason I click so much with my mom is because I think I matured faster to understand her even more. Because ever since I was little, she would tell me very, very wise things that I wouldn't be able to understand, But with time, it's like I'm starting to see life from her perspective. And her perspective is like, you get to see the world from this beautifully mature lens, that incorporates Islam, that incorporates her experiences because she has been through a lot. So being taught that as a child, seeing that as a child growing up, I just naturally tended to her ways. And so now we have like a similar way of thinking. And I feel like, again, I'm the luckiest person for that. And I know it's not like that for every family. But family is just, it's the one thing that I cannot stress enough is like, it's everything. And I know in some cases that's not true, but in most cases, I feel like some people just don't appreciate what they have. So start realizing what you have, start appreciating it, and understand that it's not going to be there forever. And on a last note, this is mostly for Muslims. There's this hadith from Sahih Muslim that says, when a man dies, his good deeds come to an end except 3: ongoing charity, beneficial knowledge, and a righteous child who will pray for them. And I think that's a really beautiful hadith that I want to discuss in the next episode. But it's something to think about while I get to that. So it's ongoing charity, giving charity, beneficial knowledge, spreading knowledge, and learning it at the same time. Well, learning it first and then spreading it. Obviously, you don't want the other way around. And a righteous child who will pray for them. Now, I'm not in the phase of my life where I have kids, but I feel like Instagram sometimes tricks me into wanting them. It's like so many cute baby videos. It's like I can't contain myself, but it's fine. It's fine. When the time comes, inshallah. But I think it's just a hadith that makes you think about death in a different way, where you're not thinking about your death, you're not thinking about life, you're thinking about your deeds. You're thinking about what you did on this earth. You're thinking about the things that you're going to leave behind. And I think that perspective, that way of thinking is much more beautiful than the concept of just thinking of yourself dying. A lot of people think of how death is going to be when their body is in a grave 6 foot underground. It's like death is more than that. I don't want you to think of just the image of yourself underground. I want you to think of yourself more as a soul, more as a means of good deeds, more as a means of what you have done on this earth, because your life is much more than your physicality. That's where I'm going to cap it off today. I hope today was an interesting episode. I feel like it was a lot more anecdotal than factual, but I did really want to share my anecdote of the scar because I feel like that's something that has really impacted me. And I don't think I'm going to stop talking about it because it's something that has really impacted me in my life, in my way of viewing life, Anyway, have an amazing day and I will see you later. Bye bye.